I think we can make a start. Welcome everybody. Everyone gets points for stamina as we've got to our final showcase of the day, I believe. And we're going to hear from Trust Stamp. And leading the presentation will be Amy, and I'll ask her to introduce her colleagues when they come in later. But Amy boasts more than a decade of experience in technology sales in a number of sectors, including gaming software, IoT, which I'm told is the Internet of Things, and M2M, which is machine-to-machine technologies, and of course, identity software. Amy brings this wealth of knowledge and range of insights when designing customer solutions at Trust Stamp. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you all for being here. So today we're going to talk about biometrically binding age credentials. And this is more of an innovative new solution we're looking at. And we're going to walk you through the technology we currently have and kind of where we see maybe the future of age assurance and identity lies. So we're obviously all here today to talk and listen about age and why it's really important. So with 82% rise in the amount of online grooming gangs kind of targeting children in the last 5 years. So we kind of have this position where we want to protect children online from accessing harmful content. But the other problem is that when you're protecting children online, we also need to protect their key identities. That's like biometric templates, any other PII they have, because we don't want children's data out there to then be stolen, reconstructed, used in manipulative ways again and again and again. So we're kind of in this juxtaposition where we're talking about protecting children online, but also need to protect their data and their privacy. And this is where we've kind of come into play. So we've kind of developed, as I say, an innovative way, which is age estimation as a service. And during this presentation, the idea here is to open up the floor for some discussion around what this might look like in the future, where maybe people have ideas and where things may come in. Where we currently stand is we have an age estimation product which will take your age from either a video or a selfie. It'll give you an estimated age range, but also we can do buckets. So is this person over 18, 99%, over 65, any kind of metric you want to stick in there. And whilst that's running, we have our presentation attack detection software, which is saying, is this person alive? Is this person real? And we're kind of then generating the age from that. So that's kind of where the technology is at the moment and where we kind of are with age estimation. And we kind of see the future is developing maybe into more age estimation as a service. So one of our key principles that Scott's going to talk about is facial authentication without biometric data exchange.
All right, so my name is Scott Francis. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Trust Stamp. We started off as kind of a vanilla facial biometric company, kind of doing very much the same thing that most people in the industry do. However, when we started collecting this data, we started getting very nervous about the data that we are collecting because under GDPR, we always need to have this notion of both data minimization and also being good custodians of the data that we were collecting. And with biometric data, obviously, this is kind of the most PII data that you could ever collect. And so we kind of stopped development on our current facial biometric technology in order to start looking at ways that we can kind of de-weaponize the biometrics that we're collecting. We came up with our first technology a few years ago that is what we call our fuzzy IT2 token. And IT2 stands for irreversibly transformed identity token. And so what this does is it takes the biometric data, converts it into a standard biometric template. It then extracts entropy out of that template, out of the feature vector, and creates a tokenized reference through a one-way transformation that no longer contains biometric data, but still gives you the same utility that a biometric template would. So I can still use this for matching, I can still use this for authentication, I can still do one-to-N kind of deduplication, but now if this token is taken, it can't be reverse engineered back into original forms. We ourselves don't know whose token this might be, and it only has value when it matches again. And that kind of started us on our journey. As we continued to progress, we started working with a lot of banking and financial institutions. We started looking for a way, how can we make this better? how can we do the same type of thing and maybe not even retain a token? And this created what we call our stable IT2. We just did a press release on this maybe a month ago, I think. It will be in production hopefully in Q2 is where we're kind of shooting it for. And this, instead of a token, is now a cryptographic system. We've created an ability based upon facial biometrics currently to be able to extract up to 256 bits of entropy that when done can actually create a stable key based upon facial biometrics. This is very similar to a private key and a private and public key encryption. So now this would allow you to be able to biometrically sign. It gives you absolute 100% accuracy as far as a one-to-one match because it's creating the same key. It does not allow you to do one-to-n. So we still use our fuzzy token in order to do deduplication and things of this nature. But in this case, what it also allows us to do is we have kind of secret hash and helper data, but the actual biometric doesn't have to be stored and the key is only retained in memory. And then from that key, I can create other types of things such as public keys, asymmetric keys. I can digitally sign, but I never store that private key. And so in this case, after I do this transaction, I can delete the key that's being created. The biometric data is also never retained. And it creates a system that allows me to do pure authentication, but actually never storing biometric data that's collected. And so that's kind of the new area that we're moving into, and one that is getting a lot of excitement in the people that we're talking to.
Thank you. So yeah, in this instance, we're looking at making sure that in the case of the children or anybody else who's under the age of 18, their data is not being stored. We're never capturing it. It's never been anywhere. So it's kind of the ultimate privacy first way to ensure that children are protected both from content online, but also having their biometric data and PII online.
Okay, so now we are going to talk about how we can use stable IT2 for age verification. We'll start with talking about biometrically bounded credential, which basically is a KYC. We assume that the person has a document, and from it we can extract a stable IT2. Then we will talk about how to extend this for parental control model, where we use the parent to basically give consent to a minor to enroll into a system. And the final one is to use age estimation directly. So in this first scenario, okay, we are talking about an adult person who is going to give consent a child to access a service. So basically, actually this is the adult taking a picture, and from the picture we compare it to an ID document. From the ID document we get the age of the person. Once we are doing that, we are calculating what we call the stable IT2, which at the end of the day you have a secret which is generated on your mobile device. That secret generates two sources of information which are stored in different databases. From the face, we are combining with the face. We are generating all this. Now, without the face, you can't generate the key. So basically, we need the face, the sketch, and the helper data to be able to generate the key. So the key at the original, you use it to generate the stable IT2, and you delete it. So then, once you are that, the second time you are going to do the verification, unless you present your face together with these two sources of information, you can't enroll. So if another person, X, tries to enroll, he is not able, but myself, I will be able to enroll. Now, a simple extension to that is for the person, for the adult, to do the KYC. So basically, you are generating the stable IT2 on the parent. Once the person from the age, okay, we know that he is old enough to be a parent, then he can give consent. So at that point in time, we generate the stable IT2 on the child. So even if an external person tries to access information of the child, he can't, because the account belongs to the child. Okay. and he can do verification on the child.
Yeah. We are aware of, obviously, there are some parental consent model does have some flaws in it, in that you could, how do you identify someone as being a parent of a child? You know, does an older brother, does somebody else, register on this? So the parental consent model does have, it has some weaknesses in that, and how you identify who a parent is. And we want it to be an inclusive technology. We don't want to kind of exclude any subsets of society. So then we kind of moved forward into what we would call age estimation as a service.
Yeah, age estimation as a service will completely remove the KYC and will allow the child to register to an account himself. So basically, the child will be bounded to a device using, say, Pelator 2. But before we give him access, we check his age. If his age is a minor and he is going to access data that belong to minors, so he is allowed, then he will be given an account. If not, he will not be allowed. And again, as usual, because of, say, Pelator 2, only the child will have access to that person.
Perfect. So that's us. We're TrustStamp. We are a privacy-first identity company. And this has been Ruben, who's one of our head leads of the research department, and Scott, who said he was our CTO. So if you'd like to ask any questions, I understand it's quite a complicated piece of technology. So please feel free to ask any specific questions you may have.
Any questions? I don't know if you were here to see the European Commission present, but they're talking about trying to standardize age verification, particularly in their case for adult content. And when you see something which is a bit different from how other people are doing it, my first thought is always, how do we make sure we don't inadvertently write you out of history by creating a standard that doesn't allow for your technology, it doesn't recognize the benefits. So do you get involved in the standards making process? Have you done that, if not in this area, in other areas? Do you find standards useful, or are they inhibitive?
First of all, great question. Some of the areas, for example, our tokenization strategy has been problematic. We're actually working with some Danish lawyers that are very much schooled in GDPR, because we make the argument that the tokenization strategy that we have gone through doesn't necessarily fit any of the current definitions under GDPR. As we know, things like that don't move quickly. However, we're trying to slowly push the ship in that direction. With standards bodies, obviously, for a lot of the things that we're doing, again, there was the NIST thing yesterday that was great. We're obviously, going to be putting some of these things, but again, NIST doesn't yet have a tokenization standard, so we're kind of in a gray area, some of this. The other thing too, though, is I think one of the things about our company that's interesting is we're not necessarily set on one particular way of doing things. This is kind of the current way that we're seeing things. If the wind starts blowing a different direction, we have no problem changing sails also. With a lot of biometrics also, we don't necessarily always use our biometrics. We're more interested in the tokenization and the data privacy aspects of it. So we've tokenized other people's biometrics also. We believe in many cases, a lot of the technology that we're going to do, not necessarily is value add to our own products, but could also be value add to others. So I think we're definitely open to a lot of this thing. The biggest issue in some of these is there's lots of standards bodies, and it's a lot of time and commitment, and it's making sure that we're members of the ones that are going to offer the kind of the best based on resources allocated.
Thank you. Yes, we obviously through the Trade Association tried to plug in on behalf of all the members to get into the right standards and to keep an eye out for those pitfalls. Great. Another question here.
Hi, my name is Ian D'Asher. I'm here from the Information Commissioner's Office. I've got a shout out and a thank you to TrustStamp. You responded to our consultation last year on biometric recognition technologies. I hope I'm not calling anybody out, getting anybody in trouble, but we had some very helpful conversations with Norman Poe,
Yes.
who very much kind of turned us on to kind of ISO 24745. And some of the results of that was the kind of security element of our guidance in that chapter was much improved. So thank you very much for that. I had a question specifically about one of the areas of kind of weakness in some of these kind of processes is this issue of you can bind to the device, but how do you bind the device to the person? And I just wanted to clarify, when you were describing that process, are you talking about a process that would require a kind of face kind of verification recognition in order to kind of access? Because there's always that issue of the backdoor of the passkey or kind of weaker controls. So I was just wondering if you could repeat that part of the process.
Sorry, Scott.
First off, thanks. I'll pass the notion to Norman along. It's funny because the way Norman, if he were here, he's our chief science officer, by the way, would describe this system is very much passkey-like without the notion of it actually have to be bound to a specific device. So for the secret, the helper data, et cetera, actually you could export this, you could have this on multiple devices. The biometric itself is the important thing that is the unlocking process. The other three pieces of data, in many cases, what we will do is, as a convenience factor, we might put one on device. We might put another piece on a trust stamp server. We might put a third piece on the customer server that we're white labeling with, right? Also, in that way, it adds a little bit greater security in that none of the individual pieces reside on one piece of equipment. It could. There's no reason why it can't. And again, we're starting to get into conversations with one of kind of our lead first kind of customer that wants to put this thing into production. And these are some of the discussions we're having because in our mind, right, security is of utmost concern. In some cases, there's that user convenience or, hey, what is the re-enrollment process? Or what if I do lose my phone? What is that going to look like? And there's always that notion of friction versus usability that always comes into play. And we can always err on the side of building Fort Knox, but at the same time, then if no one wants to get in, then what value are you really having? To your point, right, in many cases, the other reason why it might be interesting to tie to a device, much like how a lot of FIDO does, is because it's another piece of authentication, right? If it's always coming from this device, and this is the one that I was enrolled in, then that's tacitly a second factor of authentication that I'm doing beyond just the biometric. Again, in this system, it absolutely is not required. But again, in principle, the more factors of authentication that I have, the happier I am. And so again, it's one of those things that we're kind of toying with as far as when the final implementation goes. The other thing that we didn't mention is kind of, we're also building flavor of IT2, stable IT2, with it being either 100% on device or server based. And it can be, there's reasons why you potentially want to do both of these, right? On device, I can do very much of a zero knowledge type of thing. Data never leaves the device, but yet at the same time, I'm able to authenticate via the credentials I've created in order to do so. Again, other people don't trust devices. They'd rather things being on server. And the reality is, based on the technology we have, there's nothing that's preventing us from doing it both ways or even making it configurable based upon what a customer wants. Again, we will probably, before allowing any sort of configuration, we're going to spend more time on security audit in order to make sure that, because again, we think about biometrically signed credentialing, PAD and things of that nature become extremely important. And again, and then the question also becomes one of use case of what are you actually using this for? What's the value of it? And then based upon that, that's going to also quantify what attack vectors or how important is it going to be for criminal elements. And again, you can add more layers of friction as the value goes up. And people see that now as a positive, right? If I'm protecting a 10 million euro transfer, you making me jump through 5 hoops is greatly appreciated, right? If it's something where, to open my diary, 1 hoop is enough type of thing.
Thanks. It's been really good to learn about tokens because we're sort of in the process of effectively pivoting the entire age verification industry across to tokenized solutions so we can use them for interoperability. Yeah. I've got a lot to learn, I'm afraid, but any other questions for these guys? If not,